Well, Sister Helen, thanks so much for making time for
Yes,
us
indeed.
today.
Yes.
Um, you know, we're all so busy, and it's amazing that you've been given this opportunity to talk to Brandon. So,
Yeah, look, it's an ongoing thing, and it's why I couldn't make it in person tomorrow, which I regretted, but I knew you'd all understand that here's this man. He was just 18 at the time of the murder. He had never murdered anybody. He wasn't the kind of guy that did violence to anybody. And everything that could go wrong went wrong for him in his trial. They had this bogus expert who claimed that Brandon Bernard was future dangerousness for the country. He was a killer, he'd kill again. The opposite has been true for 20 years. He has been on death row at Terre Haute, not one violation. He gets along with everybody. He's so remorseful about what happened because a couple was killed and they were stuffed in a trunk. And he did participate in lighting the car on fire, but he had been told they were dead. He didn't intentionally set out to kill anyone. And so here he is now. I'm trying to think how I even got involved, but I guess the lawyers reached out to me and we have had several conversations together. And you know what he's doing today and what he's doing yesterday? He's supposed to be killed on the 10th. Today is what? The 8th. Today is a Tuesday. So he has a Wednesday and a Thursday. So he's seen his last Monday, his last Sunday, his last Saturday. And just to get close to the agony and anguish and torture of what it means for an alive human being to be killed in this act outside themselves that comes in from a force. How is this happening? It's because people like Trump and like Attorney General Barr have been given this authority of life over death, that they can choose that people die. And I've been saying this on all the media interviews I've been doing. It just highlights the brokenness and flawed way that the Supreme Court set out to do the death penalty in the first place. Well, first of all, we shouldn't be doing the death penalty. If you read the Eighth Amendment and you just look at the word cruel and you look at the UN Convention that defines torture is an extreme mental or physical assault on someone rendered defenseless. And what could be a greater mental anguish or assault than to say, I have 3 days to live, I have 2 days to live, I'm saying goodbye to my mother, I'm saying goodbye to my family. And of course, the mentality of the court when they put the death penalty back in the Gregg decision in 76 was, well, look at what they did. What our citizens done in terrible crimes got to do with who we are as a people? And this is so manifesting how arbitrary and capricious it is that if a prosecutor seeks death, death can happen. If a prosecutor does not seek the death penalty, a death does not happen. To have a death sentence and to have it carried out, you have to have a prosecutor who says, I want him to die, I want her to die, and to seek it all the way through. So what happened, look in the federal jurisdiction, for 17 years, we haven't had one single execution. And then suddenly in July, because they have the power to do it, you have Trump and Barr suddenly lining up people to die. I mean, what are the political reasons? Maybe we'll never know, but there's a clear pattern in the Trump administration of using force to get what he wants. He always operates out of force and intimidation and fear. And I mean, telling the police, look, when you've arrested a criminal and you put them in a police car, don't worry about batting their head against or beating up a journalist or the use of force. And he's the one, remember the Central Park Five, when the jogger was so brutally beaten in Central Park in New York, took out full page ads. Bring back the death penalty. Get these five. They're all guilty. Bring back the death penalty. Execute them. And those five guys with their forced confessions, now it's a subject of documentaries, were forced to give those confessions. They just wanted to get home to their mamas. They were saying that. So this person, given this venal person, this politically driven, biased person, has power over life. And that is just really highlighting what is really wrong and has been wrong from the very beginning, when the Supreme Court put the death penalty back in Gregg v. Georgia. They had just found it unconstitutional in Furman in 72, saying it was too arbitrary and capricious. So supposedly what they were going to do in the Gregg decision was to just say, well, we'll give guidelines to the jury. The reason it's been so arbitrary is they didn't have enough guidelines. And then they set out an impossible task. It never could have worked. And it was that the criteria, the guideline that's supposed to be followed for the jury is it's not for your ordinary murders, not for your garden variety murders. You don't give the death penalty for garden variety ordinary murders. Who knows what that is? It's only for the worst of the worst. And nobody knows what it means. And they couple it with the discretionary power of prosecutors to go for death. And here we've seen that across the state level, which has been being shut down gradually. We have the least number of executions this past year than we've had since the early 80s. Coupled with now suddenly at the federal level, we're going to have 13 people killed because the people in power have decided they can do it. How could we ever entrust inscrutable decisions of life and death, a godlike power, on human beings who don't give life and shouldn't be given the power to take life? And then when they go and say, oh, but look, the jury decided on, and then you get into the trials. Then you look at the fault line that's been in the death penalty from the beginning. Only poor people, no rich people. And the big difference is when you're poor, how are you going to get a crackerjack of defense to do pre-trial motions, get the forensic evidence, have the resources to get it tested? It's all poor people, and overwhelmingly it's people who have killed white people. That's a fault line that's been in it from the beginning, and then the discretionary power. And we looking at the state level, it's down to 2% of counties now of prosecutors really going for the death penalty. We are shutting it down. Amnesty International always says that when you're looking at the death penalty, you'll always look at practice first. The last thing that happens is you change it on the books. And I suggest that the last thing that'll happen is our Supreme Court will be the one to overturn it. But it's the people waking up, and it's the people that change things. And that's what we're about. For Brandon's life, I just really ask your prayers. And I believe in prayer. And look, I've accompanied 6 people to execution. And I hardly have words to describe this to you, but it's just like I've been with people, and believe me, they had what they needed when they faced their death. They had the inner resilience and some sense within themselves that they had a dignity that no one could take from them. I call that God. I call that God energy, that dignity. And Brandon seems to have that thus far. Today, he was busy filling out papers, seeing who's going to get his letters, no, I don't want my body cremated, talking with his relatives, where will we ship my body, all the things of death for this young man who has so transformed his life in these 20 years where he's grown up in prison. May his death, and the deaths of all these people be redemptive for us as a people. May it so awaken our hearts and fill our hearts with righteous outrage that we need to take the power away from government officials. Thank God the Catholic Church is now really strong, no exceptions. We cannot entrust over to government officials to decide who lives and who dies among citizens. It's got to be out of their reach, out of their reach. Take it away from them. They can't handle it. It's like too big a gun that their hands too small. Their ability to make decisions, all the bias, all the racial bias of all the 1,500 plus people who've been executed in this country. And partly what's awakening us is the huge number of mistakes. We thought we had the best court system in the world. I did when I first got involved in this in the early 80s. 172 wrongfully convicted people have been put on death row, and by the luck and grace of God, we're exonerated. And for every 9 that's been executed, 1 human being has been set free. 1 in 9. That's how big the mistake rate is in what we have set up. How did we think we could ever do this? But it's such a time of anguish now. The lawyers too that are working feverishly to try to save these lives. Lisa Montgomery's lawyers, Brandon's lawyers, all of the lawyers in there. They're all traumatized by this too. And they're working, maybe they say, maybe with COVID going on, maybe with hundreds of people coming into Terre Haute for these executions, that because of the COVID thing and it peaking, maybe there'll be a court that says, how many lives are we going to endanger? Whose health will we endanger to carry out these executions? So anybody within sound of my voice, I hope you're outraged. I hope this blows on the coals of our souls and inflames in us a fire that we will double and triple our efforts to end the death penalty across this land. We're on our way to doing it. Biden is coming into office, and we have to persuade him to be strong, that he can commute the sentences on death row, that he can end the federal death penalty. He can't do the states. We got to do that. We're in there doing that. We got to do that even more than we have before. And who knows, perhaps this will be a redemptive catalyst in the whole movement to help us to re-energize our efforts to take this bloody thing down and to silence the execution chambers, start putting the killing chambers in museums with little blue velvet ropes around gurneys and around electric chairs and around gas chambers. And we're coming to the day, we're close to the day. And in the name of Brandon Bernard and Lisa Montgomery, people who have all, Lisa especially, suffered in her life, may we do this. And thank you for letting me be here. Sorry I can't be here in person. You understand why. And so keep up the good work. Thank you.
Before you go, I hope that you can share with us. I mean, we talk about taking action, but what is the action that people need to do? You know, on the Death Penalty Action website, we've got ways for people to write letters to their Congress people. We've got a petition to Joe Biden asking him to speak up about these executions. We've got a petition to the president. But what would you tell people? They say, well, what can I actually do?
Well, I mean, what we got to do is go right to that website, because here you're organizing that. You're organizing the action. Here people feel especially kind of paralyzed because what will Trump do? What will Barr do? But, and here's the extra cruelty in this. Lisa Montgomery is going to be killed 8 days before Biden comes into office. If you want to talk about arbitrary capricious, look at this. So, Abe, let's everybody go to that website. Go to deathpenaltyaction.org and get in there and sign the petition and write the letters. It will direct you. And that is the gift of community. We don't have to do this by ourselves.
Excellent. And what would you say to somebody that's just Well, there's many of us are getting old. I mean, you've known me for, gosh, more than 30 years
I
now.
don't have any different message for anybody getting older. It doesn't
Well,
have anything to do with it.
well, there's people that just get inspired. And, you're
No, it's
inspiring too.
got nothing to do with age. Just conscience, fire, get in there, do it.
Got it. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say to the people
No,
that are
but
gathered?
thank you for organizing this. Thank you for organizing this.